Coming up, they say the heat in Miami will kill you, but tonight it was all Brooklyn Nets 109-105 road victory like we all knew it would be. Let's get in on the action coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Marbeck. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We're free on all those great platforms. We let you know this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. And Doug, let me go ahead and take a deep breath here because the Brooklyn Nets on the road after what was arguably their worst first half of basketball this season, storm back, down 16, victory. We'll go through it all, man, but this is exactly what you want from a team like this, full vibes.
Dude, after what felt like two sort of bone-crushing losses in the first two games and then a nice little blowout of the Hornets, you felt like, the tide might be turning, and maybe like the Nets just deserve a little luck. I'm in the we deserve a little luck sort of territory every once in a while, and then you get everyone dropping like flies with injury, and then you get Mikal not coming out for the second half, and you're like, oh man, are we just on the bad luck train here for the rest of the season? Is this what it's going to be like? Are they just going to get absolutely blitzed? No, the complete opposite. This team rallies behind guys who haven't even played, full team effort, guys just coming out of nowhere, draining threes. I mean, these dudes, we all knew them, going into the game or whatever, but this was such an exciting win that, this is one of the cooler wins of the last couple of years, point stop, just being able on the road, getting killed in Miami, team that just came off going to the NBA finals, every reason to pack it up and just, live to fight another day. And they just go out and do the exact opposite. Not only fight back, but actually fight back, overtake them, and then hold on in a way that like easily could have gone the other way. I could not be more excited. What a win.
It's incredible, man. Fifth straight win against the Miami Heat. This is a team that we know, right? The Jimmy Butlers of the world, the Tyler Heroes, the could have been Brooklyn Nets of this past offseason. And then ultimately what it ends up coming down to, we'll go through, I think, some of these sequences that get them there, obviously. But really what you want to do if you want to be a productive NBA player is be a part of the bench for the Brooklyn Nets. Now, if you're a part of the bench, you get put in the starting lineup, then the next guys that take over the bench, now it's your opportunity. It's awesome to see what I think at a very, very high level, I'll just say quickly here, is when you finally feel like there is a system that this team wants to run, and then you bring in players that you feel like give you redundancies for your starters, for your bench players, down to your G League. That's how you get opportunities like this game. When you need more shooters to step up because of all the injuries, you have those guys that you can make a quick switch from the G League, bring up Armoni Brooks. You already had Lonnie Walker there, and let these guys do exactly what you fundamentally believe they can. Help stem the tide here, help bring the Brooklyn Nets back, and then it ends up being some key sequences, some frantic sequences, but Mikal Bridges with a couple of clutch moments, a couple of free throws at the end there as well. Just, man, it's awesome. It really is. And by the way, full transparency, let me peel back the curtain here. I wasn't necessarily vibing coming out of the first half. I was getting a little low. I was thinking about this team being 1-3 with, Chicago and then the Bostons and then the Milwaukees of the world. Shame on me. Shame on me. The Brooklyn Nets never had a doubt. Neither should I.
Well, you know me, glass half full, glass all the way full all the time. So no worries there. Oh, no, look, how could you not? This is hard, man. Like you're getting killed. Your best players aren't playing, or most of the guys you thought were going to start aren't playing. Again, you're going against a mostly healthy, pretty good Heat team. It'd be impossible not to think that. And that's again the other thing that makes a win like this such a cool moment is because I think that even the most positive of fans, and I think sometimes fandom can just have you trending negative anyway. Being a fan of a sports team is tough. Like every year, except for one team, you end up with a loss, right? This is just how sports goes. Like, there's only one team every year that doesn't end the season with a loss. But this is just the kind of game that I think even the most diehard and optimistic fans get into that halftime and think, okay, this is just not going to happen. But to see the fight, I think you make a great point about having interchangeable parts because that seems to, and we kind of thought that about this team going in was like, hey, they have a lot of guys, No, they have guys even coming off the bench that might not be total specialists, but they also don't do anything maybe all that poorly. And that can actually mean a lot. Like that can actually mean a lot for your team and in terms of a floor raising kind of situation. And then sometimes you just need to get a little smoking hot from three from some of these guys to be able to stay. And that's going to happen too. Like sometimes you're just going to have those nights where guys are just heat checking a little bit. And those are the ones specifically that you really, really want to win, because sometimes, those aren't going to come around all the time either. You're not going to get crazy, just crazy hot shooting. But if I told you that in this game, I just clicked off of this. If I told you in this game that Mikal Bridges and Cam Thomas were going to combine for 34 points, you would have thought the Nets lost by 30. Maybe more, right? Just because you're like, well, how? Knowing Spencer Dinwiddie's out, knowing Cam Johnson's out, knowing Nick Claxton is out, and those guys are going to combine for 34 points, and I didn't tell you the rest of the score, the rest of the line, what was going to happen, you would have been like, oh, Nets lost by 30, and let's see what they do against the Bulls on Friday. Yeah. Because there's just no other way to think about it. And I think what this really does, and I can't wait to talk about these bench guys, but I think what this really does is a win like this has to, as a fan, has to really buoy you around what the Nets' chances are for the rest of the season about fighting, and why we always thought that over under 37 was low is because we're like, this team is never going to pack it in. They have guys with something to prove. They have guys that want other contracts. They have guys that want to stick with teams. They have guys that want to get paid. It goes all the way down the roster like this. And I think we can just expect to see this kind of fight like the whole season long. And they're never going to tank it. And that's really, it could be a really cool story all the way through.
100%, man. Only 17 points in the second quarter. You're down 16 at the worst here. Even as you're going through the third quarter, there is a time when you're down 71-58. And every time, even in that third quarter, you felt like, okay, at least they're showing that it wasn't going to be a total dumpster fire tonight. It wasn't until you got to the fourth that you really saw these great sequences. And bookending all of this, first quarter, first half, and then late, were these bench players. And that's who we're going to turn our attention to coming up here in a second. Armoni Brooks gets brought up from the G League. We saw him in training camp. We knew what he was capable of. Guess what? He can do it inside of an NBA game as well. We'll break down all those key contributors along with Lonnie Walker, along with Trendon Watford, and how the Brooklyn Nets closed this one out, getting themselves to 500, coming up in just 1 second.
All right, already in a good mood. Let me put myself in a better mood. Tell you about our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy just made very, very simple. You're not wrestling with salaries over on PrizePicks. You're just going more or less on the PrizePicks projections. You're picking 2 to 6 player stat projections. You're combining them together. You can win up to 25 times your money. And like I said, sometimes with these other DFS operators, they want you to just try to put together a lot. And you're not doing any of this on PrizePicks. You're just going different stats, more or less, points, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals for the NBA, touchdowns, yards, receiving yards, rushing yards, all that stuff for NFL. One of the cool things they have over on PrizePicks too is you can, maybe you're a cross fan, like you're football and basketball. You join one of the specials league, you can go more on like a Travis Kelce, just receiving yards, and then you can just go over and just do Mikal Bridges, more 3-pointers made in the game, something like that. You can combine the sports. The other thing they have is injury protection. You're not going to really find this anywhere else. It's a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured, if they leave in the first half, that player is just going to get rebooted. You're just not going to find this kind of stuff in any other platform. PrizePicks has just figured this out. You go figure it out for yourself. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnba. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Once again, prizepicks.com/lockedonnba. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy.
All right, so as we continue the conversation, 109-105, Brooklyn Nets victors on the road against the Miami Heat. I want to get into this bench unit, obviously, but I also want to highlight, which will only set the table because these guys were contributors in key categories like perimeter shooting. It's worth noting that in the first half coming out of this game, the Nets, even though you say, well, they're down 10 at the break, and you think, well, if you can clean some things up, maybe you can find a way. They had only shot 16 of 43 from the field, 37%, 7 of 20 from beyond the arc, 35%. Got to the line 11 times, only knocked down 7, 63%. They gotten out rebounded by 7 in the first half of this game. The assists, they were okay with. Everything else about this is bad, 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 bad. Got beaten the points in the paint as well. Then flip the script. 45% from the field, 44% from beyond the arc, 73% from the free throw line. Still not great, but got the job done when they needed to. Took over the assist category and won that as well because sharing is caring. And ultimately, the fast break points, 24-13, was a big part of how they got this done. And a lot of it came from the likes of, specifically, let's just start with Armoni Brooks, because this dude is an NBA level shooter.
Oh, and that we knew. Like, look, we know
Yeah.
summer league, preseason. Like, we knew Armoni Brooks could shoot. The question was, could he do enough on the around the rest of the court to be able to stick? They'd get him on the two-way here to bring him in. They're in emergency situation because of so many guys are injured and they just need bodies. I mean, projecting the Nets minutes tonight was tough. Doing this every night, I was like, I thought Brooks and Watford would play just because when you looked up and down the roster, you're like it's tough to get to 40 minutes or just give me 240 minutes with this team. But to have him come out, I mean, absolute ice water, 6 for 7 from the field, 5 for 6 from 3. He was really the catalyst for getting them, like, to kind of keep them in the game, right? Because the Heat missed a ton of open shots. The Nets could have been down 25 at halftime. Like, the Jaime Jaquez specifically probably kept the Nets in by just missing all of his 3-pointers. Brooks does the other thing, goes the other way, makes all of his, and sometimes that's just the story of keeping a team, like keeping yourself close, keeping you believing, keeping the energy high. Hey, can we keep it within 10? Can we keep it within 8? Is it still a game? Okay, we can still keep fighting. Brooks obviously doesn't end up closing the game, but he for sure was the reason they, not the reason they won, but the reason they could believe, right? When you were able to just knock down these shots and just take these triples each, like seemingly every single time down the court, like that is what gets everyone believing. And then you're like, well, we can't waste this now.
Yes.
And so I want to say he's the reason they won. But like I said, he's the reason that they were, I think it's clear. This is not a hot take. He was the reason they were in it at all.
By the way, he mentioned his stat line, 17 points. The Nets won this game by 4. He's a plus 30. He was a plus 30 in this game, plus 15 for Lonnie Walker, who also came off the bench, only knocked down 1 of 4. But this actually was the nice combination between these two key contributors. Both gave you 17 points. Armoni Brooks does exactly what you expect, lights out from beyond the arc. Lonnie Walker, who doesn't have a great three-point shooting game, but goes 4 of 9 from the field and gets to the line 11 times. This ties into what was, and we'll talk about here, we're saying it's a team win because Cam Thomas had an off night, and we knew that this was going to come. And I actually think you heap on another layer of really being excited about this, because one of the things early in the season, first 3 games, we're saying, well, is this going to be like either Cam Thomas does it all offensively or we lose basketball games? Here's an opportunity to see somebody else come in and contribute. So Lonnie Walker replacing some of that get to the line ability of Cam Thomas. Those were 2 key contributions, obviously, there. And then we even talk about Trendon Watford, who we were waiting, finally gets in here. And maybe it in part has to do a little bit with Simmons and the early foul trouble he found himself in along the way. Plus 19 for him as well. 11 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. He showed the carryover of all those skills, right? On ball. He does enough. There's a key sequence. I know I'm going long here because it was all too exciting. There was a key sequence when normally, if it's a Ben Simmons, even if it was a Nicholas Claxton, let's say, a dribble handoff at the top of the key. But because he has the athleticism and ball handling, he lets that shooter go by, turns his shoulder right downhill, and goes at the rack. That is the kind of player you need for these little bursts. A great game from him as well.
Yeah, he was critical because they needed his size desperately too. Just especially, Simmons went to the locker room for a short period of time.
Yep.
It's tough to play Day'Ron for a lot of minutes because he just still doesn't totally get it on all levels, and just doesn't fit into their switching scheme really. And without DSJ and some other guys, it's just going to be really tough to keep sharp on the court. But Watford, again, sort of Swiss Army knife style, is able to do just enough, right? Like he's able to get on the boards. He just had 4 assists. He had a steal. He knocked out critical 3-pointers when they really, really needed him late. And yeah, he's just one of these guys where it's again, it's hard to pinpoint the thing he does exactly really well, but there's nothing he does poorly. And if you have enough guys like this on the team, I can't say it enough. If you have enough guys like this, you can be more than the sum of your parts, right? You can be 5 guys who maybe aren't all that exciting to look at on individual levels and are not going to show up on top 150 lists and us all this other stuff when they're breaking down who the best players of the league are. But when you are good at a lot of different things in the game without being elite, well, now you get those guys all together on the court and you can overtake a team that's better at times. It's going to take a little luck. Like there were sequences here that the ball could have gone either way. I mean, there were some chaotic sequences in this game.
Which, by the way,
like,
sometimes the Nets need this from a veteran, experienced Miami team. You got to get a little chaotic with us because that we're not fully there yet, right? So let's get a little messy at times.
Yeah, like the ball's just like it's changing hands like way more often than it should be. You got like a crazy Simmons block, a behind Simmons block that he gets, and like
because he turned it over by himself and then
exactly
right,
exactly. And there was like 4 of those. It felt like 4 things like this time where it's just like everyone. It's like a scatter plot on the court because no one's on offense and no one's on defense. Like it's just like there's no everyone's kind of everywhere. No one knows if you're coming or going. The game had that sort of chaotic feel at times. And sometimes when you're in the muck and the mire like that, you just need to be able to be scrappy enough. You need to have the ball bounced the right way for you a couple times. Sometimes it's felt like that has not happened with the Nets over recent years, though. When you're a fan of teams, it always feels like it's not really kind of bouncing your way. In this game, the bounces definitely did go their way in the end. And they have these guys, again, who just aren't going to kill you, right? Like, they're not going to speed bump.
Like, it's not 10 minutes. The Nets have had years, and we know even the superstar era, especially when you're so top-heavy, we go, we just need to survive a few minutes. Survive a few minutes? You're getting dug 6 feet under and buried in a lot of those situations. Now, the Nets look at it not only as surviving, but actually, then more often than not, we're going to look across to your bench unit and say we can win those minutes. And that's the difference when you're starting 5, even when fully healthy. You probably say our starting 5 can go toe-to-toe, can keep things close. That's a very positive attribute to list for them. And then it's our second unit that needs to help us get those leads that we can come back in and protect, right?
And in the past, too, these Nets teams, the bench units have been sort of like just veterans, and they were going for a different kind of player because it was like championship level team, and they want to, be able to mix and match things in the postseason. And they're just going for like more for age. This is like sort of dice roll kind of players. Talked a ton about this in the offseason that we're going to roll the dice on a bunch of these guys. The hope is that like 2 to 3 hit. Right. They're not all going to hit, but let's say can 2 to 3 hit? Can it be Watford and Walker? Can it be Armoni Brooks that comes in and just buries threes? Like, again, like sometimes it's Darius Baisley's not on the team anymore, right? Like sometimes it's Harry Giles. He's like kind of buried. Like it's not going to work for everybody. But the key here is that it works for 2 to 3 of them. And if it does now, and here's a great thing for this going forward. Now that this happened in game 4, we saw it in game 4. It's like now because the injuries are going to be a problem all year. Injuries are always problems for teams. Yep. You can go to these guys now. Like we've already seen
game 12. I can do it in game 35. I know that these guys are capable.
You might even be able to play them in regular rotation minutes. We might just see Watford play regular rotation minutes. I don't think it's going to be the same for Armoni, but Watford though, we might see regular minutes out of him just because it's just good enough. And sometimes it takes these crazy games to kind of find that out, to force your hand to have to play some of these guys that you really wouldn't be able to justify in other situations. But now, because you just have to break the glass, you are able to see it's like, oh, good, we got something here. And this game we walked out of this one. I think we already knew it from Lonnie from the last couple games. And now with these two, it's like now we have a couple more guys like this. And that's a really, really good state of the sort of the team going forward.
Coming up here in a second, let's talk about Mikal Bridges and his performance, some late game sequences and key moments from him, round out some of our thoughts on this basketball game, and then where the Nets go from here. When Doug just mentioned rotation minutes, what are we identifying out of some of these guys that came in tonight, and can they be a part of this team going forward? We'll dive in on that coming up next.
All right, before we get to that, I'll tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, over on FanDuel, new customers are going to get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. Now, why is this important? Because if you had been listening to the bonus podcast that we did going into this game, we talked about where the money line was for the Nets at plus 300 going into the game. You put that $5 money line bet. Not only do you win that, well, now you get your 150 in bonus bets to go with it. That's because you gave you a winner, and then FanDuel sweetens the pot a little bit with $150 in bonus bets. If your team wins, hey, guess what? The Nets won. Maybe you weren't thinking of that at halftime, but that's okay. FanDuel's going to pay it out no matter what. FanDuel's not working on feelings here, folks. It's working on what the actual outcomes are. And this outcome, that money line bet came in. Spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Going to kick off the season now. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
And as we continue to wrap up the Brooklyn Nets' beautiful comeback win over the Miami Heat 109-105 here on the Locked On Nets podcast, we remind you, get over to joinsubtext.com/lockedonnets and become a Locked On Nets insider. Doug mentioned it, game day previews. We're going to give you some of our matchups. We're going to tell you why the Nets can beat a team like Miami. And you get to come right back at us. It's all the beauty of inside information plus one-on-one conversations with Doug Norrie and myself. Join subtext.com/lockedonnets. And of course, be a part of the post games live on YouTube, which what's happening right now. Doug, a little note here on the Ben Simmons, which I'm not going to put him into the stellar category in this particular game. Gives you the 11 rebounds, gives you 34 minutes, gives you 5 assists. I hate to go into the, hey, here's a positive. The guy did pick up 4 fouls, had 3 fouls within the first 7 seconds of this game. I like the fact that, and this is nothing that he shouldn't be doing. A year ago and 2 years ago, this guy would have walked out there, picked a couple fouls and said, you know what? Slap, slap, slap. I'm fouled out. See you later. It's good to just see that, like, he was able to manage his way through that. There were a couple of key defensive sequences where he did what he could to contribute without taking those fouls. Because again, you mentioned about a Day'Ron Sharpe. Without him really being able to be a consistent contributor, you're already getting thin from a size standpoint. You needed Simmons to be a part of it. But for me, this is Mikal Bridges. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. Guy's still struggling from deep. He just quietly scored 21 points in this game and also had 7 rebounds and 5 assists to go along with this. We talked about this in our last episode about the numbers and where we think these things were going to grow. Another pat on our back is that I think that Mikal, we're seeing the scoring is going to be a little lower, but the other contributing categories are going to be critical. And I thought he had some mixed bag moments, but also came up clutch late in this game.
Yeah, he struggled again along with Cam. I think that Heat did a really good job of sort of mitigating the thing that the Nets really kind of were able to beat the Hornets bad on. And I think we're able to play really well against the Mavericks with this style too, with the Simmons led lineup, is that like all that space that we saw in the interior that was able to access driving lanes, the Heat would almost like it would be there for a second. And then if you watch, or just go back and watch this game, the amount of sort of like help that would come, the scramble in and out that the Heat do really, really well. They're really connected defense. That was like particularly problematic for what Mikal and Cam Thomas like to do, which is get Simmons, basically get one of those guys onto whoever's defending Simmons, right, with like a dribble handoff, and then try to cook one of those guys, get past them, and then it's either, a mid-range shot, get to the basket, or get it back going around because you beat the primary defender. They couldn't do it at all. It's why things were so stymied in the first half. I think that's going to be probably a continued issue if teams zero in on sort of how to stop these guys. I'm not like worried about it part-time, or sorry, for the rest of the season, but just something to keep an eye out for. But again, the fact that like they were able to withstand bad games from these guys is, and I guess 21 points in 31 minutes for Mikal isn't bad, but it's probably below expectations.
Inconsistent, I think, is really right. The inconsistent game from Mikal.
You don't feel, let me put it this way. We're 4 games in. If you did not know that Mikal Bridges had a torrid end of the season last year with the Nets, you'd be hard pressed to like just go out and snap call that he was easily the best player on the team. I think that that's really what it is. If you just came in blind to this season and just started watching them now with no experience and no subtext to whatever was going on, you wouldn't know that. Again, great sign that they have not gotten peak Bridges, the Bridges performances here, and they're 2-2.
Yes.
And with a positive point differential. That's actually probably a good thing because I think this stuff is going to come around for Bridges. But it's just an interesting sort of like little subplot to what's happening here. But again, like I don't want to try to, and also too, on the positive side, he closed it out in like the way that a guy who leads the team does. Make your free throws, get to the line, score, go to the basket, put the ball in his hands, and you can feel good about it. That is what the best player in a team does at the end of the games. And like that, you have to pat him on the back for.
And, I'll also give Cam Thomas here again, because this is all positive. The Nets get the win on the road here. But Cam Thomas, who only in a struggling night shooting, only came away with 1 assist, had 3 steals. But I will note that we've mentioned this before. I don't want to always use it. But the hockey secondary assist, there were a couple of times, like the only reason that he was able to stay on the floor is, and Jacques Vaughn talked about this before this game and before the previous game, is that Cam Thomas is locked in and engaged on what he needs to be doing defensively. It's not perfect. He's not one of the best defenders on the Nets team, but he stayed in front of a couple of guys a handful of times. When he was having bad shooting performances throughout this game, he came up on the right side of the paint above the arc, could have jacked up another shot, and he took plenty in this one. Don't get me wrong, 19 shots, started 1 of 10. But he found a way to wrap a pass around to the corner that kicked back across the court. And you still saw, and I think this is a good sign going forward for Cam Thomas and the Nets, you still saw that the Miami defense, in spite of the bad shooting night for Cam, they were paying attention to him. They were trying to take him out of the equation. So the fact that he was able, at least to, in a couple of small moments, make a nice play, I still put this in the positive category that he was able to have an impact in a good way, despite having almost no impact on the stat sheet. So again, that's me, digging as deep as I can to not have Cam say, hey, it was a bad night for Cam. But I think it matters that you can still be engaged in the game. Just like Ben Simmons, not your best night. Okay, can you stay on the floor? Can you make a few key plays? Good. That's what matters most, including get to the line a couple of times here for Cam. 3 of 4. Hey, 13 points. Nets needed every single one of those to get this win.
Well, the good news for the Nets too with Cam is that, yes, again, we've said this. It's like, hey, one of these shooting nights was going to come. It just doesn't. Yeah. You can't run. You can't run as hot as the sun here for like the whole entire 88 to 82 game stretch, especially with the way
Damian Lillard can have an off night, so too can Cam.
And they lost again. So I think to be able to withstand it. But the good news about Cam is like he's actually so known at this point that his defenders are going to need to stay connected no matter what. And that actually will usually help even if he's having an off night, because you'll still get the gravity around him.
Yes.
Because you can't really allow him. Like he's been so good that the opposing defenses can't allow him to just sort of just roam free at this point. Now he's not getting trapped and he's not to that level yet, right? Like they're not going to. I actually was wondering if teams will start doing this, if they'll start trying to trap him a little bit more and see like what happens. And like, if it really, really causes the Nets defense, like significant problems. They did pressure him pretty high a bunch of times. But in general, having a guy that other opposing defenses at least understand the potential issue of leaving him is still helpful for the overall offense. Even when he is having an off night. And I think that alone probably at least just helps the Nets going forward a little bit. A couple more things. We're going to stay on YouTube live here for a few minutes, just because we got tons and tons of people on YouTube. Really, really appreciate it. I did want to go back to Simmons real quick with this.
Yes, yeah.
Kudos to Jacques Vaughn here because, and I know no one ever wants to do it, keeping a guy in with foul trouble is like, I'm always so pro keep the guy in because you can't die with the fouls. And this is the perfect example of this, where it's like, oh, he picks up the third foul. Everyone's losing it because he was in there for the defensive possession. Every point counts in this stuff. Now, I know he got a ticky-tack foul, and it was a stupid foul by him, but he's the best defender on the team. They need every minute from him. I guarantee the defense is worse if he's on the bench. And, yeah, he might foul out. It might not work. But the thing is, benching like one of your best players because of foul trouble is so stupid anyway. I think it's so overrated. Vaughn did not do it. They basically stuck with him through the foul trouble, and they needed to. And so I know everyone wanted to hammer it because I got a ton of messages that were like, oh, it's ticky-tack foul, blah, blah. He finished with 4 fouls, so it didn't even matter. So good. Like keep him in. Anyway, sorry to just go off of that tangent, but no, I just think that's a hard thing for coaches to do sometimes because it's so ingrained in these guys. 3 fouls, take them out. 4 fouls, take them out. He's like, nope, keep playing. We need you. We can't win without you. So you might as well just go foul out if you need to do it. And he didn't do it.
And to your point, 34 minutes from Ben Simmons tonight. If you take him out and you use the foul trouble construct, he doesn't get over 30 minutes in this game. He may not even see 28 minutes in this game because of how long here's the thing. That dictates. Go ahead.
If you want to be results-based because he had a ticky-tack foul with the 3, then you also have to be results-based that he didn't foul out. So you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you can't have it both ways. You can't be pissed off that they kept him in with the 3 fouls and then not be happy that he didn't foul out because it didn't end up mattering. So if you're just going to only go results, then you have to make sure you do it both ways. Anyway, sorry to go tangential there at the end of the game, but I wanted to just tip my hat to Vaughn because I thought that was the right move.
No problem at all. We close out with this note as it should be as the Brooklyn Nets win 109-105 on the road in Miami. It was a 26-point performance from the Miami Heat bench, 45 points among Lonnie Walker, Armoni Brooks, and Trendon Watford, kicking an extra 5 from Day'Ron Sharpe. That is how you win games, by absolutely destroying the bench-on-bench scoring production. Nets get a massive win, day off. We'll talk all about more of this again before the Friday night tilt for the in-season tournament kickoff with Chicago.
All right, we're going to get out of here. Make sure you join subtext.com/LockedOnNets. Get in on the action over there. Make sure you're subscribed to the pod feed because we're doing the pregame stuff over there. It's only on the pod feed. And we're going to do this right now live, answering questions over in YouTube Throw up your questions at Locked On Nets. We'll get to as many as we can after a huge win. So yeah, podcast, YouTube, subtext. That's all your jobs. Go do them.
The key is not the will to win. Everybody has that. It is the will to prepare to win that is important. Bobby Knight.
Oh, RIP to one of the all-time greats. We will be back again tomorrow and in a second on YouTube. More Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball. Bobby Knight, basketball. Yeah. Oh, baby, it is the podcast, as we like to say over on YouTube. Look at this luxurious space, Doug. We might have to build a bigger facility here. I don't think our club can hold the volume that we get in for these post games. If, as Doug said, you have questions, throw it up at Locked On Nets. We'll start to star some as we work our way through. Something that I think you and I will talk on an off-day podcast as well, Doug. But I just think I have to go back to this here. You mentioned it in the episode. Trendon Watford, to me, this is movement time now. Now you make space for this guy. Understanding Nicholas Claxton's going to come back. Cameron Johnson's going to come back. Spencer Dinwiddie's going to come back. So the pecking order and the minute shares are obviously just going to reduce here. But I just don't see a world when you go back and look in 14 minutes, 4 of 6, 1 of 2 from deep, gets to the line and is a quality free throw shooter as well. 4 rebounds, 4 assists. He does too many things too well in little areas to not understand where he can have value for this team over the course of the season.
Yeah, we saw it in preseason too, right? He was double digits in all his preseason games, double digit scoring in all the preseason games in limited minutes. The assists weren't in bunches, but I think actually that was maybe more unlucky than anything else because he did handle the ball a decent amount in the preseason, was able to get on the glass too at 14 boards in 49 minutes. So yeah, no, I think that I kind of thought he would break camp actually even playing in the rotation, but I think when fully healthy, they just do kind of run out of minutes. Like they have a lot of guys. It's a very deep team. So I'm not surprised it didn't. But going forward, because it looks like health is going to be an issue here, he's just going to play. I would be shocked if he didn't play next game. Even if like someone came back, like even if Dinwiddie got cleared, I don't think he's going to be, but DSJ, like I think he's still, I wonder if we just see Sharp kind of just go away here again. And this is more just Watford territory and they just go with the scheme that they think is going to work.
That's the point I was going to make, was for a team that likes the small ball lineups, feels very comfortable with them, sliding DFS to that spot at times, right? And you have already Ben Simmons. When Nicholas Claxton comes back, Trendon Watford offers you the flexibility. He can be the little bit of go-between guy when you want to spread those guys out, which again, we'll see when they get back on the court together, I assume is going to be something that the Nets are going to want to do.
Oh god. Oh yeah.
No. Just we got nice team chemistry. I'm just throwing out the positives. I'm scanning through and I'm pulling out every positive remark here. The Nets just won in Miami after being down 16 after a 17-point second quarter. I'm gonna tell you guys right now, love every single one of you. Appreciate you being in here. If I see one remotely negative based comment, you're not gonna get anywhere near the screen tonight. This is
I'll give a couple stats because these are Nets PR just sent this out.
Perfect.
They rallied for 16 points down to win tonight's game. They did 16 down to win 3 times all of last season. There was a 22-point comeback against Boston. That was an awesome one. I think you remember that one. It was in Boston. That was a really cool one. They were 19 down in February versus Washington and 16 down against Utah in April. So 3 times last year, did it here. And look, this is not an easy win, man. In Miami with a pretty healthy Heat team, no Kevin Love, but besides they got Jay Rich back. Like to be able to go, I mean, Butler, you figure like, okay, well, the Heat have 2 of the best players in the game, Heat and Bam and Butler, right? Like those guys are just better than anyone the Nets have, right? I don't think that's not a hot take.
No.
You know, wherever you want to land Hero in the list, it's like, you know, top 7 between these 2 teams, maybe higher. And just to be able and to be down so much and just to be able to come back and win, it's just not an easy spot. Like that is not an easy spot to be able to do it. Most times it wouldn't happen. Most teams are just going to roll over in that spot. Like I said, Mikal doesn't come out of absolute. You want to talk about fear is when Mikal is sitting on the bench and Lonnie Walker gets to start in the second half. And you're like, what is going on here? Right? Is it over? Are we really talking about everything going to go wrong here? Like everyone's going to be hurt. No one can play. So I think it was a rib issue. The fact that he was able to overcome that, because it really was trending very close to the dark period for your boy.
That's when you come in for the podcast and the lights are just way down low. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of sadness.
This on the live thing, Adam knows. We won't get into details. I've had like an absolute hell of a week going in here. And I was like, well, the last thing we need The last thing we need
Well, that's like the
is
Nori household needs right now.
right. The last thing we need here is some 25-point loss on a Wednesday where we're rolling YouTube live at 11 p.m. Eastern. And it's like trying to figure out 3 positives to take from a game they lost by 30 and everyone's hurt. Like that was not going to fly. So,
100%.
so just the fact that we didn't get there is a good sign.
Mike, we see you. It's 5-0 now in the last 5 meetings, so you can go ahead and update that stat. But we appreciate shouting that out because it's true. Listen, when you get the number of a quality team, you want to go ahead and champion that as much as possible. Another note here as well in this game, we're talking about the rebounding category, something where the Nets have had success. The Nets posted a 47-46 edge, 27-19 in the second half of this game. Like, this is also a part of it where I mentioned it. I highlighted Mikal Bridges because he's had more rebounds per game on average this season than going back to last year. The gang rebounding for anyone who's had the issues with the size and all those things. Fundamentally, you heard this from Jock Vaughn. You heard it from Sean Marks in the offseason. They said, we believe we brought in guys and we're bringing in a mentality about gang rebounding. And that's all fluffy until you go out and prove that that's actually the case. And now through these first 4 games, the Nets have proved that. We actually have created the ability with Ben Simmons on the floor and some box outs and just 2-3 bodies getting back on the glass. I think that the 2 parts of that for me are, 1, dedication to it. And the second part is what Ben Simmons represents in the transition game for this team. Because when they can get out at pace, I think that this is at least starting to, we'll watch it over the course of the season. Teams are not going to go all out for rebounds if they know that these airmail passes 3/4 court are about a half a second away if the Nets clean up that glass. So that's been a really positive for them, and they were able to turn that over from the first half of this game.
One thing that killed the Nets last year in terms of rebounding was when they would run these switching schemes and they just didn't. And this is where Simmons makes a huge difference, is being able to replace Simmons with like another smaller guard that they would play a lot last year. Being able to just have those switches, like you're not switching into someone super small anymore. The Nets would end up having, because what would end up happening a lot is that Claxton would end up switching onto the guard, which he's great at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like and they should do that, but that would mean some smaller player would then switch onto the opposing big. And that wouldn't necessarily mean that the guy would put him into the basket or whatever, but it would mean that they were already behind the 8 ball under the basket when it came to actually rebounding. And think about how many rebounds were just other teams went over the Nets.
Yeah.
Right. Like they just went, like they just went over the guy.
Positional basketball, just like, yeah, thank you.
Exactly. And part of that was because when Claxton gets switched, like you lose your ability to defend in that situation. Again, it's like you're going to give and take because you like what he can do against opposing ball handlers. He's like one of the best at it. But when that guy's like Seth Curry or even like Joe Harris, who can't get off the ground, or guys like this, like you are going to be or Royce O'Neal, who's a little smaller. Yep. Like it's just, and it's not even his fault, but it's like you're just going to be behind the 8 ball when it comes to rebounding. Replacing those minutes with a guy like Simmons has shown to make a difference, and they're able to play DFS more too. Like these guys are keeping that in check, and that's just they're winning the rebounding battle. Like and without a true center really, and so it just proves that you just don't need one of these lumbering dinosaurs to go run up and down the court and just to grab rebounds. Like they can give a team effort in this, and they're doing it.
And by the way, you're seeing that with Day'Ron Sharpe. It's not a knock on him, and he's not just a lumbering big going up and down the court to get rebounds, but you see how he gets mitigated. He has the foul trouble sometimes. The perimeter game we keep dreaming on, as we do with many of the players that are the bigger guys on the floor for the Nets. It's not there. And so, yeah, when you get the rebound, it's great. But if you don't get that key rebound, or if you battle but miss out, then what is the next thing that you bring? It's why Ben Simmons, you don't shoot. Guess why that's okay, quote unquote? Because you facilitate an extremely high level, because you are the engine of this offense now. Unless you're going to be a player like that mold, it's not enough by today's NBA to just be a guy that, the Dennis Rodmans of the world maybe don't survive as well as they would have 15, 20, 30 years ago in the NBA.
I'm going to spin this one positive here. Why does Vaughn treat Royce like it's his son 38 minutes? Maybe you can explain it to me.
You did call this, by the way. You said it was going to be Royce that would most likely insert to the starting lineup.
Yeah, because there's 2 reasons why. One is because if you're going to switch everything, which you have to do with Simmons, when you're running basically Simmons DFS at center, you are obligated at that point to switch everything, and they should. Royce is better equipped to do that. 2, just think for yourself for a second. Who can even dribble on this team? like this team outside of Simmons, who can for sure dribble, but he doesn't run traditional pick and roll. you have Mikal Bridges to some degree. You have Cam Thomas, obviously, too. These guys are like sort of ISO ball handlers. They just really actually don't have tons of ball handling on this team. And Royce O'Neal is not a ball handler, but he's not a negative in that aspect. And I just think that sometimes that alone keeps him on the court a little bit more. He played fine tonight, I thought. Like,
I'm sorry. Was the 6 points okay? 2 of 6, 2 of 5 from beyond the arc. 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Like I don't know what else from a Royce O'Neal you really would have wanted in.
He had the best plus minus of the starters. Like I just think that like he's another one where it's going to be struggle. You're going to struggle on the eye test a little bit because nothing is going to look great, but he does not do anything poorly either. Right? Like he doesn't there's nothing he does poorly. He doesn't do anything great. It's not flashy, and there could be a lot of cardio involved here, but like he's just one of those guys that like he's just one of those guys that again fits the theme of what we were talking about before, which is just go name something he does poorly. You can't.
Right.
Like you just can't. Like he just does everything fine enough. And I think that's why it's easier to play guys like that 38 minutes because you're not really giving too much away. You're not gaining a lot, but he can go out there and just basically play with anybody.
Big break here in the podcast. Just to highlight your hero and mine, Jalen Wilson. He gets in there, man. Sample size, 6 minutes, quality, rebound, block. Nothing more you could ask for from that kid. I was happy to see him out there. Unfortunately, he was maybe one of the few guys who went, well, okay. And then, come on out. There's just a lot going on out there for you, buddy. This, high intensity game here. I don't think in a perfect world, I don't think the Miami Heat is like the team you want to put any young player out for their first taste. Like, yeah, get out there. See Jimmy Butler. See if you can just kind of pick him up as he gets into that paint area there and do your best on him. But
I honestly still can't believe they won. I'm still kind of shocked here. I'm still sitting in shock. I was just not real willing to believe it. And again, was not willing to get let down once I knew they were winning. I mean,
okay. Isn't that after the first couple of games of this season? So then when they finally get the lead, you're like, yes, they got the lead. They're going to, well, now hold on here. We have already seen, and with everybody out as well, and all those things combined, all the players you have out, you do finally get the lead. So you're a little bit shocked by that. You think, okay, now we got this thing locked up. But wait, though, Cam Thomas is having a bad night. So you're not going to him in these moments. You're still trying to figure out, and you had the Tyler Hero bucket that made it a 1-point game there late. So it was like there was still 100% the lump in the throat all the way down until the final buzzer.
Those are the ones I'm like, if we're going to come back, I would have rather you just lost by 25. If you're going to come back and lose here and then give it away in the final minute. And when Hero hit the 3, I was starting to think that I was like, oh, here we go. He hits this 3, then he hits another one. They're hitting all the
2 bad sequences for the Nets offensively, turnover, sloppy.
And then when we didn't talk about this in the regular pod, but when they couldn't get the ball up over the court and Jacques Vaughn got the timeout in with like no time, like because they were going to get the 7-second violation, and he thankfully got the timeout. And Lonnie Walker traveled; they got away with one there. Like
no, they did. They officially did not because, and I thought they did, but they did say that the ball did get tipped. It got tipped, so he ended up back in his hands. Although, and by the way, the other thing that I will note here, not that the Nets won this game, 2 things. One, Jacques Vaughn was not going to miss getting his timeout. He was going to get that timeout in after the last game where he's trying to, and nobody acknowledges.
Well, that dribbling thing highlights what I was talking about before. Like when they can't get it up over half court in a full court press because they just really don't have the guy. They just don't really have the guys to do it. And you can't keep Simmons on the court during the late game sequences because it's really, really tough. He's going to go to the line. It's tough to have him there. So like it's just problematic. So anyway, get that timeout with no time left. This is the longest. Hey man, it's easier when you win.
Time of our lives. The time of our lives, Gerard. What do you want from us?
It's a lot easier to talk to Nets when they win, but believe me, buddy.
The other thing that I thought about this game too, that you can also like have a chuckle on now that the Nets won the game. And it was Cam Thomas. I can't remember if it was in the third quarter, maybe the fourth quarter. He drives, he makes the bucket, and he just says to the ref, hey, like he got me on the arm. And it was like, boop, immediate T for you, young man. And I was like, oh, so this is the world we're still living in. Like when you play the Miami Heat or any veteran team, it's never something that we care about, calls, they go every which way, whatever. And also there was a stretch where I was like, boy, I tell you what, though, if you're in the lane and you're wearing a Miami Heat jersey, you're probably going to the free throw line here at some point. And if you're the Brooklyn Nets, get up and get back on defense because they were not going to have those type of moments. I thought Cam Thomas still working on being a supersar. I think
that's like to be expected. Yeah, I was going to say that's sort of to be expected. It's like
100%.
These guys just went to the finals. This and Armoni Brooks just came off the street. Like, who's going to get the call? Like,
right, yeah.
who's going to get the calls here? This is just how it works. And I didn't think the officiating was too crazy. There was like a few ticky tack things. I think the Nets probably could have gotten a couple and ones. I think Thomas had some legit gripes, and this is just kind of how things work. Like, I don't think that you can't really, there's no expectation levels around, sort of who's going to get calls and what's like, this is Lonnie Walker and Cam Thomas and Trendon Watford. This is, you're going to have to earn it. Like, it's just like, that's just like, you're not going to, there's no one's giving you anything at this point. Which makes it even more impressive.
Today, I'm an NBA player right now. Why don't I get the calls? There's a couple other good ones here we can highlight here. There's always a room in the NBA for a lumbering dinosaur. I disagree. Well, also, Jonathan, if Dorian Finney-Smith stays with Brooklyn past next season, do you see him become a PJ Tucker type where he does the defensive gritty work and knocks down some big buckets? I don't know if his defensive versatility would be where like what PJ Tucker has been able to be at certain points. Although, to be honest with you, I've been pleasantly surprised basically with Dorian Finney-Smith, like across the board this season. And when a coach says and players say, and we've talked about this, last season, only so many games, a lot of different systems, trying to blend everybody together. You go, yeah, okay, great. But like, you couldn't hit your threes. They were wide open, all this stuff. He looks like a different player. Like, he looks like the player that the Mavs were so sad to lose when he went out in the trade for Kyrie Irving.
They got to trade him. They got to trade him.
I know this. You know what I will say? I'll start the contention here now on this. You and I have been on the same page about what the Nets should be doing in the grand scheme of things. However, it's going to be somewhat impossible for the Brooklyn Nets to trade him if they're staying competitive and winning games. He's too important now. Like, he's too important to this team. I know his value will never be higher, but he's too important. If you get rid of him, then the Nets will start losing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're trying to serve the agenda of making the playoffs and being competitive, Dorian Finney-Smith will not be able to get traded this year.
It'd be so dumb to not trade him, and it's a compliment to him.
I know.
Like, it's
the dumbest thing in the world if you're still on this team. And I mean,
it would be so dumb. Like, it would be so dumb to keep him, like, just to make the playoffs.
Okay, here's the only other note I'll make on him. Unlike Royce O'Neal, and I understand that like his game, it's not, he's only going to get older, but the contract will still look good next year too. Like, they could still trade him next year and it'll still be valuable. Unlike Royce, who's going to be expiring. So
you're right there. You're right there. You probably have another year on an expiring that you'll get less for sure.
Right.
But if he's going to shoot like 40% from three again, you'll get a lot for him. You'll get something good. And that's going to be a tricky, anyway, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah. Anybody else got anything else here at Doug Watford? Yeah, they did. Watford, Brooks, and Sharp save us tonight. Well, Sharp,
you know what's amazing is that these are the guys. Which feed? Oh no, yeah. So I was watching. I was switching between the two feeds. So I watched the Miami, and then at the end I watched the Brooklyn feed. The Brooks and Watford were the two post-game interview. I mean, talk about unexpected. Like, those are the two that they pulled aside to finish off the game. So I mean, that's I don't know. You didn't see that one. Didn't see that one coming.
There was the first game, I think one of the earlier ones, maybe it was the first win. It was about, it was a halftime. They gave a halftime interview, I think a couple games ago, to Dorian Finney-Smith as well. And it was all the cliche stuff, but it was weird to see him there. And he just goes, it was like, you just got to play the full 48. And then that's always the cliche. But then he drilled down on it and he said, not 46. 48. And I was like, there you go. Don't give away those last two. We're going to need all 48. I love it. There's also, you should look, if you are a Nets fan, genuinely, the Yes Network is doing these kind of behind the scenes videos and talk about like players, their background and stuff. There's one on Dorian Finney-Smith, and I can't remember. Great. He's from Alabama, I think, originally. So it's like, his journey from his hometown to Brooklyn. There's some really nice interview elements to that. Some conversations with, like,
goes back to the court. He says he never lost on this one court, and he looks,
yeah.
It's actually amazing too when you see him on that court because he looks massive.
Yes.
Like when he stands on this
court. Well, it's the size of your foot.
Yeah, when he stands on this court, it's like, well, I can see why you never lost. Like, you're you're a literal giant, and I can't imagine that everyone in the town was 6'8" and 250 and could do everything. All right, let's get out of here.
Oh yeah, here. I'll just note this here. We'll highlight this. This just came in, the Keon Johnson signing, just another young player, former first round pick. We will talk about him along the way because this represents. You brought in Baisley, didn't pan out. You find another guy to bring in and see if that could work out. So
just take shots. The guys got to take. They're in shot taking territory here, and it's good to see that they've already hit on a couple of these dudes. Like, I think that I know it's only been 4 games or whatever. but we felt pretty good about the process, and I think that that's already starting to pan out.
And I'd already engaged somebody. I'm going to close out here. Don't worry, Doug. But I'd already engaged with somebody who had said, "Oh, 3 preseason games. You already know that Trendon Watford is a hit." I was like, "Yep, I know he is." And I was so satisfied by the time I'd be like, "Yep, it's the exact same thing you thought you were getting." Yes, and also by the way, the kid had shown it in Portland over the last 2 years as well. Guys. Thanks for being on the Post Podcast live on YouTube. We told you this before. Get over to the podcast feed. The game day exclusive episodes are going out there. We're probably going to do a couple other exclusive things throughout the season on that end as well. And then the subtext, you got to go be a part of it. We're having a blast over there, to be honest with you. We're engaging on side tangential conversations, having a lot of fun with it. So make sure you get over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnNets. Last thought there, Doug? You got a little something?
No, really appreciate everyone jumping in here. It's really hard when there's this many people in the stream to leave, for sure. Like, this is what, I mean, Gerard was joking about it before. This is the longest we stay in, pushing up in an hour. But, we just got to get the podcast out and some editing stuff. So there's other stuff that needs to happen. But the wins are the ones you want to hang around forever. And so make sure, look, we'll be back again after the Chicago game, win or lose. We're doing all season. Really appreciate everyone that jumped in.
We'll catch you next time. Talking all things Brooklyn Nets basketball. Basketball. Brooklyn Nets basketball.